Hello, my presentation today is going to be about The Thousand and One Nights. It's for Global Classical and Medieval Literature class, um, and is presented by me, Muhammad Ali. Let's get into it. So, The Thousand and One Nights origin is basically in the Middle East. It was written in Arabic originally, but some of the folk tales. So, folk tales are basically stories that were or originally handed down orally, like spoken, and just told to, uh, your kids and then the kids' kids and so on. Were very uh, famous or very common among the common people of culture in the old days. Um, so the some of the folk tales in this story have influence from Africa, India, and Asia as well. Um, Thousand and One Nights was uh, influential in Arabic and Islamic literature. It was one of the main and well-known uh, uh, stories from that time period. It was originally translated into English from Arabic in the 17th century, and later on in the 18th and 19th century, with many stories added into uh, many different old Arabic stories added into this one story. All right, so the main story or frame story. Um, Our frame stories are stories that have smaller stories inside of them, and the main story is about King Shahryar. Shahryar. Uh, he is our antagonist. What happens is uh, he basically uh, witnesses his wife cheating on him with their slaves and so on, like their uh, workers, and decides to execute her because of her unfaithfulness, and then becomes stone-hearted and decides to marry a new woman every night and execute her by the next morning because he hates women and thinks they're all um, deceiving and so on. And yeah, and then Shahrazad, where she's our protagonist. She's the king's wiser daughter, and initially the king, when she says she sees that the king has been like executing these women every single day, so she wants to interject and stop it, and tells her dad, the wiser, to arrange to get uh, her to marry the king. But the wiser is upset because he is her father, and he's like, I don't want you to die. And she tells him, don't worry, I have a plan, and tries to convince him that just let me marry the king. Don't worry about, like, she doesn't want to die. And yeah, so little bit about Shahrazad. She's well educated, intelligent, um, and decides to marry the king, like I said, even though her dad is against it. But she somehow convinces him and gets married to the king. And her plan to not get killed or be executed the next day is to tell the king. She's a very good storyteller, so she tells her uh, younger sister to hide under the bed of the king, where they will do the deed, to like hide under the bed, hide in the room somewhere, and when they're done, just uh, come out and ask her sister Shahrazad to tell her stories, and that's what happens after the first night. uh, they when everything is done, uh, Shahrazad's younger sister comes out of her hiding place and tells her, "Hey sister, why won't you tell me a story? Would you tell me a story?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll tell you a story." So that's her plan, to tell a story every night and into the morning, and not finish the story, because it's multiple stories, but in one major story, within one major story. And since she doesn't uh, finish the story each morning, or the king is kind of intrigued to know um, what's going to happen in the story. So he, first few nights, he's like hesitant, but he's like, I actually want to know what happens next. So he's like, okay, I won't execute you. I'll execute you once you're done telling the story. So she basically uses the stories each night to educate the king about wisdom, mercy, justice, injustice, and love. Um, so yeah, and then some of the stories. So she keeps telling these stories night over night, and like the title suggests, 1001 Nights. It basically, she tells the stories for um, basically 1,000 nights every night, until the king eventually falls in love with her. And because he learns a lot about wisdom, mercy, justice, forgiveness, and love through the stories she tells overnight, which consist of many folk tales, many folk tales, and many different stories, each uh, talking about, you know, different themes within them. And yeah, so some of the folk tales that I found interesting in within the 1001 Nights were the tale of Fox and Donkey, tale of the merchant and his wife. These two are told by the vizier to his daughter when she tells him to get her, uh, tells him to marry, that she wants to marry the king, and he's afraid, so he tells her these stories of fools who did certain things and ended up in a bad situation. So basically, he's trying to discourage her from marrying the king, because he basically execute every uh, woman he sleeps with the next morning. And some other tales are Tale of the Porter and the Young Girls, Tale of Zubaydah, the first of the girls, and there are also many other stories within the 1001 Nights. Uh, al- Almost all of them are very interesting and intriguing and funny and so on. So some of the themes, in my opinion, that are in the 1001 Nights are basically related with Islam and the Islamic culture at the time. It teaches you about mercy versus tyranny, like how you, especially as a king, you should be, or as a leader, you should be merciful, not a tyrant, uh, not go, come down on people. Instead, try to understand and be understanding and be merciful, be forgiving, and so on. Also, uh, fair justice, like if someone does a crime, sometimes they deserve forgiveness, but depending on the crime, they should have fair punishment, not excessive punishment, not less punishment. In the case, if you know someone personally, you shouldn't give them a mild punishment just because of um, your affiliation with them, versus unfair persecution. Love versus lust, like there there's a difference between actual love and just wanting to be with someone. What the king basically did, he would just be with a with a new girl every night, and then just kill them the next morning. So it teaches us about love and lust. Also, wisdom and foolishness. A lot. Some of the main the folk tales, uh, hit on this theme of wisdom versus foolishness. You have to be you have to be wise in your decisions and in your thought process. A lot of the time, what your eyes what you see from your eyes or what others tells you can be very foolish and can make you foolish, and therefore you end up making decisions that will be very foolish and will be very irrational, uh, for you and for other people involved. And yeah, I found that story to be very interesting. I know we weren't supposed to read the whole thing, but I actually ended up reading the whole story. And yeah, that's why I decided to do my presentation on it. That is it for me, and thank you so much. Uh, yep, bye.